Actually, what happens if you even click on that link? Just blank. I don't know if people can actually see that. It'd be nice if people could see the stream. I mean, at least then we know people are actually watching it. But as it stands, there's no way to tell. Yup. It's literally quiet. It's literally quiet. Right, let's put that up. That link just looks like a mess. It shows the full. Oh, I wonder then. I guess on TikTok it would be a short link, but over here. See if we can see it on the other end. No, that's it. Nothing I can do about that one. Nope. Okay, apparently it's working. I can't really tell. Like, that background's going to be ultra distracting, I assume. Ah, yes, I remember why you can't do that. They're linked together. Look, I don't think anyone is able to see that stream. It's gonna take ages to build it back up to where it was, man. The internet sucks. What a tragedy. Okay. At least that bit seems to be working. Kinda. Too much hassle. Right, so that is definitely visible, apparently. Where is it? Alright, can't get a sound check done yet. If you wouldn't mind. Yo. Where is it? Alright, can't get a sound check done yet. Ugh, it just takes too long to do. I've got to figure out a better way of doing this. All up in the screen. Alright, it looks like 3 people can see the stream. That's great, but still not really where we want it to be, you know? 3's better than none. Well, one's better than none also. So I'm just gonna like try and get this set up again, and then we'll like really begin the stream. Chances of the stream being discovered at this time of day are really low. If I had to go back to my old ways, then it would require too much sacrifice, which I can't afford currently. But at least I will show up. Which in itself is a type of sacrifice for sure. Internet broke or stream down. So I want to talk about humans inventing God. I want to talk about why smoking should be banned. And I also want to hear random debate topics from people. What's up, Anthony? It says 100%. Absolutely. A lot of people overlook the fact that it is actually a nuisance. Like the smell of it, obviously it unalives people. Obviously, I mean, some people seem to not be aware of that. But just the nuisance of it, the smell of cigarettes is bad enough. And when you start talking about harder, stinkier substances, it gets even worse. So yeah, it is 100% annoying. 100% in agreement with you there. Alright, so I'm thinking maybe we take on this dragon a bit. That's not really true. Like fire would have existed before humans, obviously, right? Which is a given. How humans, I guess it would be interesting to know how humans stumbled upon the fact that you could burn things and inhale them. Surely it was a happy accident in some circumstances. Kind of like figuring out that there are psychedelic vegetables and stuff like that. I doubt it was. Well, you never know, right? It's like, who was the first guy to say, I'm going to drink cow's milk? Like, imagine like a bunch of cavemen just sat around and they're thirsty and one guy's like, you know what? I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna grab that cow's nipple. Somebody did it and now here we are, like thousands of years later. So I guess it's possible that someone also thought, you know what? What would happen if I burn that plant and smell it, right? It is possible. It is quite possible. Yeah, I'm aware of that, Kenny. I know I don't study anthropology. Yeah, probably, yeah. Like, being that they're mammals, right, we would have observed that fact that we actually... So there's another, like, spanner in the works, both from an evolutionary point of view and from a religious point of view. I'm saying this as, like, someone who's not informed on evolutionary biology or just biology in general. But there obviously had to be some innate drive that said, look, I need to survive, and the female body produces milk. As a mammal, this is going to be the way to survive. But the question that I was kind of pointing to is, alright, given evolution is very most likely the thing, right? What takes care of the first version of us? It has to be something else that isn't us. In all reality, right? So that it gets weird. But yeah, someone definitely thought, you know what, I'm gonna try the cow's milk, and here we are. Is that a lie, Kenny? Are you trolling? I'm gonna take that as a troll. Yeah, but I think it's only mammals. I could be wrong though. Maybe reptiles produce milk, perhaps. I'm not sure. But I think it's only really mammals that do. Well, user, why don't you come up and explain it to me? What makes you think that humans are capable of, pinning down this already existing intelligence? If that's the case, why can't we pin down this already existing intelligence? Like, what's that about? Right, 1 second, bro. I see you. Just give me a second. I'm gonna accept your call. Oops.
Hello?
Hello, how you doing?
Hello, bro, how are you?
I'm good, man. You?
I'm good, alhamdulillah, bro. I'm Muslim. What do you mean God is not real?
Oh, interestingly enough, I don't think your voice matches your profile pictures. I was kind of thrown there. It's like a little bit of a troll.
I'm not white, bro.
Yeah, but it says Dr. Sean Murphy, bro. It's like, It's a
The
show.
show I like.
Oh, okay, I understand now. That makes more sense. I was thinking I was going to speak to a doctor. It wouldn't be the first time, but you got me.
Why would you say, bro, God doesn't exist?
Well, I didn't say God doesn't exist. I said humans invented God, but as like an independent entity, I don't think there's evidence of that being the case.
The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke to Allah, bro. He spoke to God.
Okay, why should I think that's true? Better yet, why don't you tell me why you think that's true?
Well, I think that's true because of the miracles and the prophecies he's done.
So, where do you find those things?
1400 years ago, a random Arab man in the desert predicted headphones, bro. How's that possible?
Yeah, I think that's like an updated interpretation because the headphones didn't even exist like for the last 100. Well, nearly 100 years.
Headphones
probably.
didn't exist, correct?
Yeah, but I think that's people.
My point.
No,
How
no,
do you
no.
know that?
So what people do with these kinds
Bro,
of
you
prophecies?
just-
What people do with these kinds of prophecies, they kind of like
What you
do
do, bro, you
post hoc
literally just cook
rationalizations, and they like try to update the prophecy based on the information they have now.
Bro,
So the
one second.
idea that you think Muhammad predicted headphones is just a testament to that thing that humans do.
1400 years ago, he said that cars would be a thing, that airplanes would
No,
be a thing.
no, he didn't. Because he didn't have the vocabulary for headphones, and he didn't have the vocabulary for cars, and he didn't
Exactly,
have the
that's my point.
So
God told
you're
him.
making it up. That's the point.
Bro,
You're interpreting that into the text. The text doesn't
bro,
explicitly say
listen, you
that.
don't understand.
I do
agree
understand
with
very
you.
well.
I agree with you. 1400 years ago, an Arab man in the desert couldn't possibly know that headphones were a thing.
Bro,
My point is, God is the all-knowing, and He told
look,
him.
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you're not that gullible, and maybe you're just trolling. But if
Bro,
you
God
are
told-
serious, then give me some reasons to think that's the truth.
Because God is the all-knowing. God knows the future and the past, and He told him.
How do
That's
you
like
know
the
that?
Muhammad wouldn't know this. I agree, but
So,
God
but
told him
how
this.
do you know that?
How do I know what?
Everything you just said about God.
Because 1400 years ago, Muhammad couldn't know this. So how do
So
I?
where
conclude?
did you get that information from?
The Quran, the Hadith?
Aha, exactly. Right, exactly.
Okay.
A religious
what is your
text,
point?
a religious text written with a theological agenda. If you could
Bro,
find sources
what is your
outside of
point?
that,
What is your point?
because it's reinforcing your beliefs that you already
okay,
hold.
bro.
So
there's
if I was to tell you like, oh look,
Bro, you
you
gotta
know,
let
you
people
know,
speak, bro.
you gotta let people speak too. Like, if I was to tell you something ridiculous, like, you know, Mario can like jump in holes and like teleport in dimensions, and you're like, oh, how do you know that? And I tell you, like, I played Mario. Does that mean
Yeah, okay.
Mario? Does that
Well-
mean Mario can really do that, or does it just mean that's in the
Okay,
Mario game?
Listen, you made a claim, but not proof.
No, I didn't make any claim, right?
Okay,
Like, what are you
one
talking
second,
about?
bro.
Like,
Can
yo,
I
it's an
establish-
analogy. It's a parody.
Can I speak, bro?
Right, okay.
The Quran and the Hadith say this. You're saying because it's a religious text, the theology, bro, I can't even say the word. You'll say, okay, I get.
You probably should if you're
But-
gonna believe in it.
Okay, well, 1 second. Okay, even if I granted you that, okay, that's why I believe it.
You gotta be trolling,
The
bro.
Quran, there's evidences that the Quran and the Hadith have
gotta
been
be trolling.
preserved for. Can I finish?
Like, you can't be serious, bro.
There's evidences that the Quran and the Hadith have been perfectly preserved for the past 1400 years.
That
So
doesn't
no
make
way-
it true.
It does.
No,
Because
how?
no
All
one-
right, so explain your reasoning. Explain your reasoning.
Okay, let me explain it, bro.
Okay.
Whether you accept it's true or not, my point is, you literally just said a few seconds ago, it's a religious text, people can update it, but 1400 years ago,
Your
an Arab man couldn't know
interpretation.
headphones.
No, the interpretations
Bro.
update. Listen closely. Listen closely. Don't get lost. I never said the text is updated. I said the interpretations update with new information. So,
Okay.
for people who were reading the Quran, let's say 1,000 years ago, they had no vocabulary or understanding of a car or of headphones. So when they read that verse or that chapter, they didn't interpret it as headphones or cars. Okay, but you today in 2026 have information about headphones and cars,
Exactly.
so you
And
can
that's the point.
so you can interpret it differently
You think that point
to
helps
them.
you?
And in 20 years from now, some other technology might come out and people might reinterpret it differently.
Bro,
The fact
that
of the
doesn't
matter
help
is, it's you interpreting what you want to believe out of the text, not what the text explicitly says.
Okay.
So if you can point to the Quran and find the words headphone, then you might have a case. If you can point to the Quran and find the words car, then you might have a case. But it's you interpreting that out of the
thank
text,
you.
okay?
So I can point to the Hadith and I can find
Do
the word
do you
car.
admit that?
Yeah.
Do you admit
can-
that the words
Bro, can I
headphones
speak?
aren't in the Quran?
In the Hadith, yes.
the Quran. The Hadith is a
The
side
Hadith and the
text.
Quran come together. You
No,
cannot,
the Hadith
use
is a
one.
side text, right? It
No,
can
it's
be.
not. No,
Yeah,
it's
yes,
not.
it is. Well, it's
No,
not.
it's
The,
not.
it's not the
No,
main
it's
Quran,
not.
right? Look, I'm not gonna argue with Muslims about Muslim stuff. You like live your life, right? But anyways,
Bro,
explain
listen.
your reasoning why you think
Okay,
the fact.
I'm using it.
Listen, explain your reasoning why you think
Bro,
the fact
listen,
that a
shut your
Quran.
black ass up, boy.
Do you see? Do you see the problem with these people, right? And they wonder why a lot of people don't like them. Like that's like a prime example right there. Like you wonder why. You know, it's insane. It's like yo, like what did they expect? Anyway, how horrible is that? It's like, come on, bro. If you're gonna like, you know, throw down the gauntlet, you represent the entirety of not only your race, which you sound Asian or some type, but your religion, right? You represent all of that when you come into a conversation publicly, and look what you do, right? So just remember that when people look upon you and your people, and they're like, well, look, they behave like this, they can cite examples like you, right? Yeah? But I'm not saying they should, but you just have to be aware of what you promote, right? You could have had a civil conversation, but no. I didn't drop him, by the way. He ran. A scholar is just somebody that studies, bro. You don't even have to be an expert to be a scholar, okay? If you go to school, you could become a scholar. That doesn't actually lend you credibility or authority, you know, like... A lot of you guys are confused about how academia actually works. But that's another conversation. I think all types of smoking should be banned. Simply because the cons outweigh the pros. It does more harm than it does good. Right? I think the production, sale and consumption of tobacco and cannabis related products and things akin to those should be highly regulated and socially engineered out of our societies. No? Right, so interestingly enough, Greedy, right, I'm very interested in the topic of freedom. If you want to come up and have a discussion about it, I'd love to have that conversation with you. But in terms of freedoms, it's very hard to prove freedom exists. Like, you can have a social, like for instance, truth could be what's considered a societal or social construct, okay? In the same way, freedom can be considered the same thing. Now, if you move freedom beyond the ability to make choices into something more metaphysical, like free will, that's something you cannot prove exists. Like, many people try, and they just simply can't. Hell no, Celos, right? You want to come up and explain to me why I should think that? In fact, as I understand it, like, the way like meme or mimetic warfare works in our modern time, the statement that Jesus is king is actually used as a type of it's used as like a type of anti-Semitic attack point, right? I know not everybody walking around as a Christian on earth saying Jesus is king is anti-Semitic and attacking Jewish people, but how it's like the words themselves are co-opted into our modern time. When someone expresses Jesus is king, it's actually like saying F the Jews, with all due respect. I don't think that either, but a lot of people don't realise that. Why exactly, right? That's the next level to it, right? Why is it an affront to like Jewry, right? Because Christians believe that Jesus is the king of the Jews, but Jews don't believe that. In fact, they're the ones who shunned him if he actually existed in that kind of capacity. So to say Jesus is king, it becomes a kind of you create unnecessary tension, right? Whether you believe it or not, you know, it's not like it's not like you're saying like, you know, I really like Jesus kind of thing. It's like I'm on this side of the war and they're on that side of the war. So every time I say this, I attack. It's like that. It's like a dog whistle. But being that I'm an agnostic atheist, I don't really care. You do what you want to do. But I think, look, right. Historically, the biggest perpetrators of anti-Semitic, you know, genocides have been Christian people. Second, anyways, look, it's a lot to get into, but yeah. Well, Thomas Tank, why don't you come up and talk to me since you think you're capable? No, this is actually a fact, right? If you do some observations of like right-wing spaces on our modern, in our modern internet, no, various internet places, you'll see the words Jesus is King is a type of it's a type of dog whistle. It's a type of attack, mainly designed to aggress upon Jewish people. Hello.
Hey, what's up, man?
Not much. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm pretty good.
Can I get a name?
I just wanted. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm Cade.
Cade.
Cade, like CADE.
Cade. Cade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, bro. What do you want to talk about?
Bro. I was just wondering, like, so you say smoking should be banned. What do you think about like vaping, like cannabis, as opposed to smoking?
All right, so I really don't mind answering that question, and we can talk about that. But what I like to do when we discuss the topic of smoking being banned is ask a few questions at the beginning, and then we go from there. Is that okay with you?
Oh, of course.
All right, so the first question is, have you ever worked in or around the tobacco or cannabis industry?
My bad. I'm lagging. I missed that.
Have you ever worked in or around the cannabis or tobacco industries?
No, not personally, but I'm planning on it.
Cool. Have you ever used either of those substances?
I have.
Do you mind sharing what age you started using them?
Probably 15
Cool.
and 18 for tobacco.
Last question. Have you ever tried to quit or gone on like what they call it, a tolerance break?
Nah.
Cool.
I don't really gain a tolerance, honestly.
Say again,
I can
sorry?
use the same amount every day. It's personal, but like it's not for everyone. But I don't really get a tolerance. I don't know why.
Oh, you think so?
I guess.
Yes, I guess you're an exception. But anyways, like the floor is yours now. Any points you want to make or questions you want to ask, it's for you.
I mean, why do you think it should be banned?
I think the cons outweigh the pros in almost every scenario, from a health standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from a social standpoint.
What do you think about alcohol? I know that's like moving the goalposts, but do you think that should be banned as well?
Well, I don't know enough about alcohol in terms of, look, I put it to you like this. Yes, I'm in agreement that alcohol is dangerous and damaging. Yes, I'm also like acutely aware that my country has a big problem with alcoholism and it does kill a lot of people. So just on the base of that, yes, I also think alcohol should be regulated. But in terms of banning it, it would be different because the applications of alcohol are too numerous in comparison to smoking. But just in short, for consistency, yes, I also think alcohol should be banned, but it's nuanced.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so what about like? I mean, if you think about it, if you smoke, like the combustion is obviously bad for you, but if you vape it, like it's not as damaging.
Yes, but potentially. So,
My bad, I'm lagging.
although it's true, you can drop down and request back up if you need to, if that helps. Maybe it might be my stream. But like, what was I going to say, right? So, although initially, say again, sorry.
Oh, it's fixed. My bad.
Yeah. So initially, yes, like the smoking part of anything, whether it's tobacco or cannabis, is doing direct damage to your respiratory system, scarring your lungs. In terms of moving over to vapes from smoking, I think that's a good start as an alternative. But given how relatively, let's not say new, because vaping used to be quite a niche thing, but let's say relatively new in terms of public, like vast public consumption, there's not enough data to say what the long-term damage of vaping is yet. But if you're just saying as a comparative, moving from traditional smoking to vaping, yeah, it may be safer. So that's probably true.
That makes sense. I mean, I just think I don't think cannabis should be banned. I think people should just be able to do what they want. I don't know. I guess it's pretty libertarian of me, but
I mean, like, I hear the argument. I understand the concern as well, but I don't think you really mean that in totality. I think, all right, put you like this. You said people should just be able to do what they want, right? Do you think people should be able to commit violent acts on other people if they want to?
I think they should be able to do what they want with their own bodies, not if it causes harm to anyone or anything like that.
All right, so but you also have to consider like you're not an atomized person. Like you're not like just existing in a vacuum. Everything you do involves interactions with thousands of people in so many different various ways every day. So in terms of the bodily autonomy argument, Do you think people should be able to, let's say, mutilate themselves in public,
Oh, definitely not.
but it's their body?
I would say honestly, I'll just say I think they should be able to do whatever drugs they want to do. Like if you want to get strung out,
See, like,
go in your
like
little
you started
cabin.
out like a big wide circle, like do whatever you want is your body, and now it's,
Yeah,
it's
I
slowly
gotta
it's slowly
bring it
tightening
down
in,
because-
right?
Yeah.
Okay, just so there's more to it though. So for the view, again, I understand the view on like personal freedoms, libertarian ideologies. I do get it. There's a lot of valid critiques and a lot of valid concerns, but you have to be careful with what's called like a slippery slope fallacy. Like, if we allow
For
this to
sure,
happen,
yeah.
then they'll take our rights there, or they'll do this to us.
Exactly.
In the past, it's happened, so it's a valid concern. But the problem is this. This is like philosophically speaking, okay. In order to have a freedom in like a social or civil sense, it must have limitations. It must have barriers and perimeters. An example of this is, I think it's John Stuart Mill or something like that, right? But I think the example that he gave was, in order to have freedom, you wouldn't be able to sell yourself into slavery. Okay, why wouldn't you be able to sell yourself into slavery? Because it would prohibit or make impossible future freedoms. So decisions that you make now could hinder the overarching freedom. Therefore, freedom itself must have parameters and barriers. Okay? So in the same way, you would like to be able to say philosophically, it's my body and my choice. I could do what I want to do with it. As we start to examine like the various different possibilities of how it could go, you start to realize, oh, actually, it's a bit iffy if we go full fledged into this, right? What about so there's like this psychological phenomenon in psychology where people feel like they need a limb amputated in order to feel like the person they're supposed to be, right? I forget the exact terminology for it, but it's an actual thing. It's not the same, so don't get me wrong when I say this, but it's almost comparative to what's described as gender dysphoria. You wouldn't understand it unless you feel it, right? But the people who experience this feeling of needing a healthy limb amputated, to them, it's their body. So should their ability to feel like they need their limb amputated meet up with what the market allows for in terms of doctors and surgeons, or what the healthcare system, e.g. public health, matches up with?
I don't believe so. Yeah, because it's like that's against HIPAA. So.
But so this is the thing, right? Now, when you like, I know that was like a very specific niche thing. Like you're talking about bodily autonomy, but then you're talking about public health.
I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, you basically destroyed any of my argument, even though it wasn't even. You know what I mean?
So yeah, it goes deeper though, right? So to say, so you get the bodily autonomy. Like I can do this specific act. I can self-harm if I choose to harm, right? But then you also have to remember, right? Now we're looking at personal rights, but then we're looking at collective rights. Things like belonging to a country, things like belonging to a community, belonging to a group, a race, a religion, etc. Right? Up and up the chain it goes, because, like I said, we're not atomized, we're interconnected in all these different ways. So the act of being able to express your bodily autonomy doesn't ever just affect you, the person, because you can't do anything isolated. Okay? So that's why you have to consider smoking as a cost to not only you, but the people around you, your community, your country, financially, etc. Because it actually does, right? There's like 8 million deaths a year. 8 million deaths a year from smoking.
Oh yeah, I'm for sure like cigarettes.
About 7 plus of those are direct smoking, and then 1.6 million of those are secondhand smoking. So that's like kids, and friends and families and strangers. So there's that. Then there's the cost on the healthcare system, with lost productivity, caring for the sick. All these kinds of things are in consideration. Things that, if we were being honest in like a public way, should actually be paid for by tobacco companies as part of their externalities, right? But that's too much extra stuff, for sure.
I mean, it is all paid for because I mean, they just want people sick so they can not cure them but treat them, so it costs more money.
In a way, that's true. It's definitely true. There's a big part of big pharma is exactly like that. Supply and demand, but it's also a sneaky way of creating demand too. So it's kind of scary when you think about it. It's kind of scary.
I mean, there's not many. I'm not like real. I mean, cigarettes I could take. I don't do that. I don't like cigarettes or anything, but I think they are terrible for you, and I think most people should know that. And if they don't know that, they're in denial. But what about cannabis? There's no deaths technically attributed to it.
I don't think that's actually true, right? So in terms of immediate use of cannabis, no, you won't die. Just like immediate use of alcohol, you won't die. Immediate use of tobacco, you won't die. But
Well,
long-term
you
uses,
could if you overdose
no, like so, yeah, like we can't think of all drugs
on
as
alcohol poisoning.
yeah, but that's not like singular usage. That's like excess. Like like I'm about to explain, right? So, cannabis isn't one of those kind of drugs like a heavy opioid or something like that where you can compare it in terms of the overdose effects. Yes, you can have like what we in the UK called whiteing. It's like basically it's projectile vomiting, and like it's just horrible, right? That does happen if you smoke too much cannabis. Very well known fact, okay? But that's immediate outcomes. What you're actually got to look at in terms of deaths, right? Yeah, some people call it greening out, right? We call it whitening, right? But we actually have to look at in terms of deaths is the long-term health effects, because just like tobacco, the inhalation of cannabis scars the lungs and damages the respiratory system. But it has an extra effect which tobacco doesn't necessarily have in the same in as great potency, put it this way, which is what it does to the brain. Okay, so if you actually were able to quantify it, right, so the damage done to the respiratory system, then damage done to the psyche of the person and the actual mental or biological development of the brain, then that would probably account for quite a lot of deaths. Like, this may be anecdotal, but if anyone's listening, like out there, look into what came of a lot of people or a lot of people's grandparents and the older generation who were members of things like Rastafarianism, like hippies, free love, people who were heavily associated with consuming cannabis in large amounts. A lot of those people in later life suffer from things like emphysema, COPD, lung cancers, okay? And there's a direct correlation. Also, other things like cannabis-induced psychosis, schizophrenia, the list goes on and on, okay? Now, again, this is not to say everybody who ever picks up one spliff is going to have this happen to them, because they won't. Just like one drink ain't going to do that to you either. But if you think about long-term use, it is most likely responsible for some deaths, right? Just in reality.
I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what I'm saying about like the people of it though. Like if you it's definitely a risk mitigator. I feel like.
Yo, you're breaking up a little bit.
Oh my bad. I was saying it's definitely a risk mitigator if you're vaping it though, of like cannabis specifically. I know tobacco or nicotine probably isn't really good for you, but.
Yeah, you reduce one risk, which is, well, we think is respiratory damage. Again, like I said, we don't know what long-term vaping does yet, which is going to be interesting. But yes, you are reducing that on that front, but you're not doing much to help the psychological damage, because we know THC interacts with the endocannabinoid system, which is like a part of your brain, which is responsible for upregulating dopamine, impulse control, decision making, like long-term thinking, and these kinds of important functions. So the study shows.
But I mean, what you were saying about schizophrenia and psychosis, if you're predisposed, like genetically predisposed to it, and you do that, it's considered a minor psychedelic. It's just like if you take like mushrooms, you can get schizophrenia exacerbated.
Yeah, this is true,
it,
but not
that's
singularly though.
underlying, though.
Yeah, so you don't have to actually have a history of mental health in your family or be predisposed to that in order to experience like derealization, cannabis-induced psychosis. You don't actually have to have a family history of it, but you are at more risk of that if you do, just like people who have heart disease in their family, they're at more risk of it too. So it's not saying that, but yes, like one. Now, to think about what I'm about to say, and don't consider it as, I'm not trying to say it as fear-mongering, I'm just saying it as a matter of fact. It is actually possible for somebody to smoke a spliff for the first time. Likely the spliff would have to be way above like 21% THC anyways, right? Possibly. To smoke a spliff one time for the first time and experience a derealization or the onset of cannabis-induced psychosis. That is possible, okay? But it's not the norm. It's not like the standard, do you know?
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, it's more though if you're like predisposed to like stuff like that.
You just have greater risk.
That makes sense.
But the risk isn't like zero if no one in your family suffers from mental health. That's not how that works.
What is it? Is it 18 that usually is when you find out you're schizophrenic?
I don't know. Look, what I could say, what I understand, right, is All right, so half of what we describe as like mental health issues is actually biological, meaning they're chemical imbalances, things that you like genetically have no control over. But the other half can be brought on by stress, can be brought on by interactions with certain substances, interactions with certain medias, and like traumas and things like that. Okay, so to say what age you can have schizophrenia, I don't know. That's something worth looking into. But I think
I just feel like
there
I
was
just feel like
a King's College study that was done in like I think it was like 2016 or something like that, and it did for Amsterdam and London, and it was like they found cannabis-induced psychosis to be one of the leading causes of actual first experience of psychosis, predominantly. But I can't remember the exact year. I could actually find it for you if you actually care. But yeah, like that being said, if you want to look at it in terms of ages, pre-25 you're significantly
Oh, for
more
sure.
at risk than post-25, right, because of the development of the prefrontal cortex.
That makes sense.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I see if I can find it. But yeah, like
Are they saying?
Floor
Are they
Johnson,
saying males are? Is it 27 for males now? I feel like I heard a study or some. I saw something about that. I don't know if it was a study.
how much?
Some clickbait. They might have said. I think I saw that said males are 27 now.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure to be fair. See what-
I'm not even. It might have just been some clickbait.
But tell you what though, while I look at this, have you got any plans of quitting in the future?
Not cannabis.
Why?
I mean, it does. I'm in a financially stable place to have enough of it. I have a lot. I don't need to really buy anymore. I found it at food stores, and I mean, it doesn't really affect my daily life in negative ways.
I mean, like that's granted, based on what you're saying, that's like self-reporting. But you also have to remember there's like there's how we see ourselves and how we interpret our lives, and we have like a tendency to cherry pick the best parts and ignore the worst parts. So it's always interesting what other people's perspective on your behaviors and what your life is too. Not saying that they should matter to you, but you know, it's worth thinking about.
I mean, me and my girlfriend smoke. My parents know I smoke. They're fine with it.
Oh, fair play.
I mean, I work for my dad. He knows I smoke. He knows he sees me smoke before we work, but he knows I'm gonna get the job done. So.
Sorry, I'm just like trying to like skim through this. Don't go. Right, so the study is called the Lancet Psychiatry Multi-Center Study, and it was done in 2019 by King's College.
Nice.
So the findings says landmark study across 11 European sites established the definitive population level link between daily cannabis use, high potency, and psychosis. It found that daily users of high potency cannabis, this is above 10% THC, are 5 times more likely to suffer their first episode of psychosis crisis compared to non-users. It says it's the attributable risk, basically saying that the weed is the cause. Okay. The study calculated that in cities where high-potency skunk dominates the market, up to 30.3% of all new cases of psychosis, this was in London, and 50.3% in Amsterdam, could be entirely prevented if high-potency cannabis were removed from circulation. So that was 2019. So
For sure.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I agree with that because they honestly they took the plant and they just bred it to only be THC. It's not really the full spectrum anymore. It's just for potency, just for that high number so people sell it.
Yeah, no doubt, right? You gotta remember, there's like how, right? So, I think it was like around the 70s, the actual plants that you would find, like although people were already like mixing and breeding cannabis plants just like they did for vegetables and other plants, but I think around that time the highest you could find was around 21% THC potency. Since post then, with like the invention of skunk, right? We are currently culturally or like globally sitting around the 90% mark on THC. This isn't all cannabis plants, which is another reason why you can't actually regulate the cannabis market, because there's
You mean like carts and
Say again?
vapes and stuff? Because I mean,
No,
the highest
not
in the
not
plant
just
could, I
not
mean,
just
it could
vapes. I mean,
possibly be 35.
no, this isn't true. It's up to 90% now. There are people who are able to produce cannabis plants up to 90% THC potency. But what I was trying to explain anyway is like one of the reasons why it can't actually be prescribed to you is because of the inconsistency batch to batch. So
I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
there are people who can, so like based on America standards anyway, you can't prescribe it because it's not FDA regulated. The reason it's not FDA regulated because it's not consistent in how it's produced in terms of the quality, the control of the actual
And
plant.
it's also a Schedule 1 substance, or it was.
Well,
Definitely.
there's also some legal things as well.
I think it still is.
Well, I
but
heard
it's
I heard
just
they made it a
medically-
bit more lax so they could do studies on it, which is good. But
Yeah, they made medical marijuana Schedule 3, but they still had recreational Schedule 1, so they're trying to do some weird, janky. I don't know what they're doing.
yes, like what Soul King's saying there might be legitimately true, but I'm not saying that the average weed on the market is 90% THC. I'm talking about the upper limits of what's
I
possible.
mean, I don't know
right?
what plant
Like
you're
I
talking
doubt.
about that could produce.
Yeah, I
'Cause
doubt
that
the
means
average
90
person is buying a bag of
90%
weed
of the
that's
bud.
90%. Like, there's no way. Right?
I'm just saying that there's no way a plant could produce 90% THC buds because that would mean the bud 90% of it is THC. So
No,
it'd just be like a little nug of
Like-
trichome.
So yeah, like obviously I understand what you're trying to say, right? But I'm talking about the extremities in terms of its potency, how it would actually be measured in like quantities. I'm not actually certain, you know.
Oh yeah,
I'm
I
not
mean, well,
actually
technically you
certain.
could just do that. You could dose edibles, 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, whatever.
Yeah,
And
that
have a specific.
it may be that what Delgo was saying, that might be in its extracted form. But that being said, the
Oh
point
yeah, and it's extracted form. Yeah,
the
of
point
course,
the
it would be
point
90,
remains that
99.
it has actively been chemically enhanced to be more and more potent historically.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
That is one of the biggest concerns with bringing it to market, is that it creates a profit incentive to keep raising the potency in order to capture more customers and sell more, etc.
Exactly.
So that's
I
one
mean,
of the
you could
things.
ask a lot of like old smokers, and they'll say it was better back then because it wasn't so super bred to only be THC, and it was more like a collective of all the actual
That might be
cannabinoids
true.
that are supposed to be in the plant.
That might be true, but that could also just be like old people just being reactionary, like always. Like that could be
I mean,
true,
yeah, definitely.
but you know,
But I mean, just the idea of taking away from all the other cannabinoids and only making one, it takes away from the full spectrum effect of what the other ones will do to you.
well, I'm not entirely informed about that, so I can't really speak on it. But I do think
I mean,
in the larger context, the risk isn't actually worth it, in my opinion. But
what do you
yeah.
know about CBG?
I think it's just what I know is it's another extract from the same plant. So you got THC and you got CBD, like they're like two sides of the same coin. But I don't think
And then
CBD
there's
CBD isn't the psychoactive part. The THC is.
Oh, I'm talking CBG.
Oh.
It's like the mother cannabinoid, technically. That
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not that deeply informed. I'll be honest with you.
my bad. Well, that has had links to like. Oh, I could actually hold on. Let me just pull something. CBG.
What the hell? Oh, that's it.
Oh man. Okay, this is it's a PubMed article I could link to the chat. 2024 November.
You can't put links in the chat, bro.
Oh.
Well, you'll see it, but no one else will see it.
It's CBG, a comprehensive review of its molecular mechanism and therapeutic potential.
So just like give me like an overview. What is it, and what does it do? Because like I have had people explain this stuff to me before, but it's a bit too.
It's a non-psychoactive cannabinoid found in the cannabis plant. It is the principal precursor to most of the cannabinoids found in cannabis, such as delta-9 THC, CBG, CBD, CBN, and CBC.
What's the purpose of it?
The purpose of it, like, so basically, when the plant grows, before any of the THC or CBD is made, it basically just that's what's produced, and then that breaks down with like oxidation, I believe, into THC and CBD, and all the other ones. There's like 200 cannabinoids, so
This is too chemistry for me. I can't lie.
Yeah, that's my area of study. That's why I like that's why I like weed. I think it outweighs the negative effects if you vape it. Combustion is obviously terrible for you. That causes cancer. There's no way around that.
I don't
But
necessarily think that's true though. Like, I think if you think about the psychological damage and the social setbacks and who's primarily affected by these things, I don't think it would outweigh it. I think
well, anyway,
personally, subjectively, you could say that I feel good when I use it, but it's literally designed.
Yeah, it's
to
all
upregulate your dopamine.
individualistic. Like you can if you're not in a financial place to afford it and you're like taking out rent money to pay for whatever, then don't buy it. But like if you got a little spending money and you want to just have a good time,
nah, I think that sends
$60.
a really bad message, right? You have to remember, like, a big part of addiction. A big part of addiction is psychological, right? Which is standalone from the drug itself, right? But then when you talk about chemical dependency, it's one thing. Like, for instance, if you ever tried to convince a drug addict that they were a drug addict, they would be adamantly telling you, no, they're not drug addicts. They are most definitely drug addicts.
I'm psychologically addicted. Luckily, there's not really many physical effects.
Right, but that was the next thing I was just about to say, right? They will swear blind that there aren't any issues, right? That they're
well, that's the first step, and that's the first step in admitting a problem. But anyway, CBG has evidence that it's anti-tumorigenic, which means anti-cancer. It has
potentially, right? But you got to remember, like, I think what was the study called? Oncology. There are various different types of cancers. So to say there is something that is anti-cancer is a little bit vague and slightly dangerous.
Tumorigenic is what I meant. Showcasing its efficacy in reducing cell proliferation, mitigation, survival in various tumor types, including prostate cancer, glioblastoma, I probably pronounced that wrong, colorectal carcinoma, pancreatic cancer, and breast cancer. So that's like a pretty decent amount of ones. And it has
that's a particular. Wait. Just to be clear though, that's a particular like chemical compound from the cannabis plant, not just any the whole thing itself. That particular compound is probably found in other things as well.
No,
you don't think? I think that's very unlikely to be the case.
Oh wait, it is. I'm wrong.
Yeah, I was about to say.
It is found in the South African shrub woolly umbrella.
Yeah. So yeah, like again, I would fully grant there are like, put it like this, right? Everything on this planet is chemical, right? Me, you, the dog, the table, everything is a chemical reaction in some form. So to say that everything, like for instance, let's not say everything, let's be specific. To say that cannabis as a plant is all bad would be incorrect. But there are definitely some good uses for it. It definitely has some value to it.
Oh yeah, of course.
I wouldn't dispute that. There are medicinal uses for it, true, right? But to keep in context what we're talking about recreational smoking, right? The dangers of that specifically.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not saying
in a medicinal setting, like have at it. Like I'm glad that it's able to be studied more so people can get more information. So I'm cool with that. But I think people
I mean, honestly, the med system over here is broken. Like you could just go there and say I can't sleep, and they'll give you a med card, and you have to pay the state $75 a month.
Well, yeah, I do hear there are some like not so good legal loopholes for it. But that being said, anyways,
like just go to Florida and you'll get a med card. Just go get a telehealth doctor.
Jesus Christ.
It's easy. Yeah, it's stupid. But I mean, like, realistically,
liberalism.
I mean, realistically, like, yes, the dispensaries are all owned by basically 3 companies, and they're all just pushing out bud. But like, the recreational market's good. I'm not saying honestly, it's not good for you. Smoking any cannabis is not good for you. But if you're taking isolate, like if you're isolating the parts that are technically good for you,
well, look,
then I think you're going on a good path.
Potentially, right? And that is not where our argument is, right? Our argument, like for instance, a lot of people like to hide their drug addiction behind the guise of it being medicinal use. Right, but let's be clear.
Well, they're
right?
just lying to themselves.
Right, but they're not only lying to themselves; they're lying to the public also, right? So there's a separation between medicinal settings or a medical setting, right, and a drug trial or the various different extracts, and you being able to buy some bud and burn some bud, right? There's a quite clear difference, like how it's like used and the purposes for its use are clearly different. So that's not really what is up for debate there. But yeah, look, it's been 30 minutes anyways. Last question for you: do you have any plans of quitting in the future, as I asked you earlier on?
Probably not, unless I'm in a situation where I can't afford it. But I don't see that ever happening.
That's terrible to hear. Right? But good luck to you, anyways. Right? So, yeah,
Thanks, man. It was a good conversation.
it's nice speaking to you too. Right? I think I learned some things too. So, take care, man.
You should look up the CBG studies. It's pretty cool. There's like antibacterial effects, metabolic syndrome, pain management, neuroprotection. There's like a bunch of like
Maybe, right? But like I said,
you can get those. You can get CBG gummies. It's like basically just taking a vitamin.
fair. All right. But anyways, thanks, Connor. Right, take it.
For sure, bro. Peace.
All right. Let's have one more. Maybe that person was like, bring me up. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Not bad. Is your name Brian, or do you want to be called something else?
Yes, sir. That's my name.
Cool.
So I've never been on a TikTok live. So it's kind of like a new thing for me.
Cool. Welcome to TikTok Live.
But yeah, I was just intrigued. And I was hoping to like kind of hear like insights, because like what you were saying earlier about how you think it's interesting to hear how other people like reflect on like your own lifestyle and like the way you see like these substances and the relationship that you might have. So like I was just hoping to maybe just ask you some questions, hear what you think.
Cool. But so before we do that, then I'm thinking you want to talk about smoking should be banned, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So a couple questions I'll ask everyone. If you're okay to answer them, we'll go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
So first question is: have you ever worked in or around the cannabis or tobacco industries?
Yes.
Do you mind going into further detail?
Yeah, so I live in California, and I used to live on a farm, and we used to like sell weed. We used to grow weed, sell weed. We knew a bunch of people in the area that were like grew a whole bunch of plants. They did CBD also, so it was like, you know, like without the high part, just like the medical benefits. And like I've never been like super interested in the CBD side, but I would say it's helped a lot of people, just like with like muscle pain and like that sort of thing. But I don't really think you want to talk about CBD. Do you have a problem with CBD or not really?
No, right. Again, like I was saying to the last caller, if you're talking about extracts used in medicinal settings, no, it's not. That's a different conversation. So, but anyways, right. Before we get too off track, so you said you have worked technically in the industry, right? So you said you used to grow and produce and distribute, right? Next question is: have you ever used either of those substances, tobacco or cannabis?
Yes. I smoke pretty regularly. I'd like to get away from tobacco. I don't really necessarily like tobacco. Yeah.
So do you mind sharing what age you started using them?
Yeah, probably, I started smoking, well, I actually started with concentrate, so it was like edibles and stuff when I was like 13, and then I started smoking it when I was like 14, and then I probably started nicotine when I was like 15 or 16.
Okay, cool. Last question: have you ever tried to quit or taken a like tolerance break?
You know, I've tried to quit nicotine, and I've quit nicotine successfully for about a year, but I kind of relapsed on it. But yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm trying. My goal is the end of the summer, just be done with nicotine. But weed, not really. I don't really take breaks, unless I really have to. Like when I go visit like certain family out of state, I can take a break for like a week or two, and it's not that big of a deal, you know.
Fair. All right, so the floor is yours now. Thanks for sharing.
Well, I definitely do recognize like many of, you know, like the downfalls of weed, and I don't believe weed is for everyone, and I think that weed is definitely an enabler of an unhealthy lifestyle. However, I just don't necessarily. Why do I think that?
Yeah, can you give an example what you
Yeah,
mean by
like, you know, I've like had friends and stuff, you know, who just like spend their entire day just like smoking weed inside, like doing nothing, like kind of like just like being all tired, like going to work, going home, smoking weed, becoming a zombie for the entire day, you know. And I think that's bad, and I think it kind of enables them to be able to do these things because it makes them comfortable.
I guess, yeah, that's kind of true. There is definitely some link between consumption of cannabis and lack of motivation because of what it does to your dopamine system.
Yeah,
So she
my
could
main
be,
like
yeah, go on,
my
sorry.
main kind of. Oh, I'm sorry. What do you say?
No, not to cut in, like Karen, you just explain something.
Yeah. But my main like kind of like discourse is I just don't think it should be banned. Just like I don't think alcohol should be banned or smoking should be banned. You know, like we had the prohibition of alcohol, and you know Americans went crazy, pretty much like all freaked out, started like making it by ourselves, became way more dangerous just because we were making it on our own.
That's kind of propaganda, but we can talk about the prohibition after you finish your point. You know.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not a historian. I don't know too much about the prohibition, but I do know um, that if we ban things, I think it's just going to be found, or it's just going to be like kind of obtained in a much more dangerous way.
That there's some truth to that, but that's also like low key part of that same black market propaganda from the past.
Okay. Well, I mean, if we had more like, you know, like, or less regulation, you know, because like that's kind of why we had to stop growing weed in California and stuff, because like we couldn't have as many plants as like we wanted to have. But that like these safe places, these safe kind of like ways that we can grow like on our own, I feel like kind of like make it less likely for, you know, a laced drug to come in, or like, I mean, weed doesn't really get laced that often.
Yeah, because I was gonna say that's also part of that same propaganda. Like, ironically, it's like look, there's a lot of good information out there, but there's a lot of bad information. You got to remember, like, cannabis was the target of like how can you put it, like just basically the war on drugs for like a lot of years. So it was like proper demonized. So there was a lot of nonsense put out. But that same kind of nonsense is being used in the opposite direction now, like a type of overcorrection. So yes, there is good information, but there is a lot of like just nonsense propaganda mixed in as well.
Yeah, because I was listening in to you earlier, and I heard the last guest bring up how he's like, oh, do you think alcohol should be banned? And you were like, oh, I don't think it should be banned, but like, or you said you think.
No, yeah, I said in short, yeah, it should be banned also.
But also,
there was some,
you wouldn't want to implement laws.
No, I never said that either. Right, I was explaining to him there's nuance in terms of how you would do it. It'd be different in the approach to smoking.
So what do you mean by ban?
So obviously, like publicly prohibited, right? Not allowed to do it. But how you would do that?
Will there be like repercussions behind this? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. Mimic stole the kill. Damn it. Anyways, right. So how we would do it? Basically, it's like I kind of boiled it down to like 5 prongs, right? So the first prong would be to keep it illegal, make it illegal, but you decriminalize it. So this speaks to like the punishment portion of what you're talking about. So it's a type of punishment, but not punishment in that sense. It's more like a social checks and balance. So how it would work is you make it illegal, but you decriminalize it. So what happens when caught using it in like places which you shouldn't be using it, and possession where people shouldn't be possessing it, you can get confiscation, you can get a public fine, right? And you can also get mandatory education rather than going to jail, getting a police record, potentially being shot. You know, like all the things that come with that, the discriminatory practices, etc. So that's like one of the points on how we would ease a ban in, is to make it legal but decriminalize it. The next thing would be to regulate the production process of tobacco and cannabis. So that'd be to reduce the nicotine quantity down by 90% or the THC quantity down, to make it easier for people who are currently using it to get off of it. It creates what's called an off-ramp. But it also allows for the semblance of bodily autonomy for people who want to still use the substance. The next thing we do is we bring in a piece of legislation like what's known to be the Ash Act, which will come into play in the UK next year. And basically what that does is it bans people, it creates a generational ban, meaning anyone born after the year 2009 can't legally purchase a tobacco product again. Hopefully they expand it.
I didn't know that was real. I heard about that.
To vapes and to cannabis, because cannabis is going to become tobacco 2.0. The next thing we need to do is we subsidize smoking cessation services. Smoking cessation services simply just means help quitting. And what that does, or what the subsidy would do, is help to pay for things like nicotine gums, patches, medicines, other like intravenous medicines and talking therapies. And the last thing you do is socially engineer it. So you have like public discourse like this, you make movies, you create propaganda, you partake in community organisation, psychological warfare, politics, policy, etc. Right? So that is how a ban would work. So just to simplify it, because I yapped a lot, the first thing is you make it illegal but decriminalise. The second thing is you regulate the production process to reduce the potency or the addictive properties. The third thing you do is you initiate legislations that regulate the market and protect consumers. The next thing you do is you subsidize smoking cessation services, and the last thing you do is you basically get involved with socially engineering it out of society, taking the cool away from smoking, showing the reality of it. So ideally, what it would look like is a slow ramping down in maybe like 2 or 3 generations to where it's not only not accessible, but it's something that the public doesn't actually want. So that's how it would be done.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because that's kind of like makes me think about like how it kind of is in California right now. Because like, you know, it technically is illegal, but in California, it's not criminalized. You know, it's like decriminalized. And I mean, I'm up for regulating it. I think that it should be regulated to a degree, but I just don't know, like, about like completely like making it like banned. I don't necessarily see a reason like I don't know like why we should ban it. I know it might be for the betterment of society, and like I see like kind of that's like where you're coming from, just overall betterment of society. But
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of a
public
freedom
health.
in a way.
Public
Yeah,
health,
public
is the
health.
primary concern, but it's also addressing like systemic injustice. Like you have to also recognize who is disproportionately affected by drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes. It's not the middle class. It's not the rich. It's not the people who you see on TV that are smiling. It's people who are poor and coming from like lower working class backgrounds. This like
I mean,
the
what about me
economic,
though?
the
Like,
social.
am I just like an outlier, you think?
Well, I don't know you personally, but when I finish saying what I'm saying, you might know if you fit
Oh,
into
okay.
this or you don't, right? So,
Oh, okay.
in terms of like single families or dual parent incomes and stuff like that, people who are on the lower portion of socio-economic realities, e.g., like low income, poor education outcomes, they are 3 to 4 times more likely to end up addicted to substances like alcohol, hard drugs, cannabis, tobacco, etc. That creates a self-perpetuating cycle which keeps them basically, for instance, for a single parent family, or let's just say a dual parent family who's not earning more than, like in America, maybe 40k, over here maybe like 30k, right? The disposable income is very small, and that disposable income gets tied up into basically addictions that could be used for various different other means, education, like enrichment, just like upward mobility in a sense, okay? So those people are disproportionately affected, 3 to 4 times more likely. And what that turns into as the years go on is that gives you bad education outcomes, meaning you get like poor education and you get poor jobs in the future. But also is responsible for disproportionate health outcomes, right? Lung cancers, COPDs, emphysemias, other type of mental health developmental issues, right? The poor and the low working class are the primary target, but they are also the primarily affected the most by all of this stuff. So I don't know where you sitting at. You said like family farm and they partake. I'm not saying all farmers are rich, but it's very different to be able to owning land and living in public housing.
Yeah, totally.
There's quite a difference there in terms of realities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just in my personal experience, like when I was growing up and stuff, like I developed OCD probably when I was like started smoking, like around like 14 or 13. And I felt like it kind of helped me out a little bit. Like before I kind of started smoking, like it could just be like, you know, a correlation. I'm not going to say like this is like exactly what caused it, but I definitely was able to actually focus in school. I was able to like kind of like set all these things in my mind that were just kind of like bothering me and causing me a lot of like mental stress aside, and just like put my mind on one thing at a time. And I think there's a sweet spot with that. Like I wouldn't like, you know, like get like out of my mind like super high and then like, you know, like do my homework, but like a little bit of weed would help me focus, you know. and like it helped me kind of de-stress. And I feel like a lot of the, because like right now, you know, I'm in college, I'm about to graduate, and I don't know necessarily if I would have been able to handle the stress. I feel like I would have quit if I didn't have something like weed to assist me.
No, that's not necessarily
And
true, right? You can think that, but right. So the things that, you know, like when Kanye was on stage, he was like, "I guess we'll never know," kind of thing, right?
yeah, yeah,
You can't really know what would be the case in counterfactuals. You can only really know what did happen. You can make predictions, but you can't know for certain. Now, in terms of like your personal experience, what you're reporting, it is exactly that, a personal experience, an anecdotal, not to take away anything from it, it's anecdotal type of evidence, right? Like self-reporting on your experience. Now,
yeah,
what you're saying might be absolutely true, absolutely valid, but in terms of like you as a human, you're not actually an exception in terms of how your anatomy functions. Now, you may have more exceptional circumstances in terms of education, background, financial, like, you know, financial stability, social network, etc. But in terms of you as an actual human being, you are just as much affected by consuming cannabis as a poor person, as a rich person. Why? Because of your anatomy, right? So you being exposed to cannabis under the age of 25 definitely has played a part in your brain's development, and you're probably still under the age of 25. This isn't a bluff.
yeah, yeah.
This is
No,
actually scientifically
yeah,
proven.
I
Cannabis
do
can
understand that. Yeah,
impede the development of the prefrontal cortex when consumed before the age of 25. Go and look it up.
yes,
It's
yeah.
also
I do
responsible
know.
for
Yeah, but
dropping 6 to 8 IQ points when consumed before that age, right? So, although,
I,
like, so your personal reporting of how you manage school and using cannabis is one thing, right? But the actual reality of what you experienced is really yet to fully play out and fully be encapsulated and interpreted after the fact. You're kind of still in the moment, do you know?
totally, yeah. No, I agree with you. I think that in the future, yeah, totally. I think that there's going to be a time for me that I don't think weed is going to fit into my life. And I think I will probably quit in the future, maybe pick it up again. I don't know. But I also do accept, you know, like before the age of 25, it can affect your like brain's development. But I don't know. I feel like it should really be up to the individual to decide whether the pros outweigh the cons, you know? Because like another thing for me too, like eating disorder, like I don't think I necessarily had one, but I was severely underweight and it was like very hard for me to eat. Like, you know, I'm like 5'10", and when I was like 18 years old, I was pretty much like 105 pounds. Like I was super, super skinny.
But you're
And
still growing, bro.
I know I'm still growing, but listen though, I started smoking. I actually was able to eat again. I was
Yeah,
able to
that's a
like
side effect.
continue to eat 3 meals a day, and now I'm 150 pounds. Like I'm not fat. Like I don't think I'm fat, but like
Yeah, that
But I like got
that
to
is
like
a
a
side
normal
effect.
eating level.
Like
And
having
I've met tons
munchies
of
helping
people,
with
you know,
eating.
with like
This is true.
like eating disorder people, like they go crazy for the weed. It helps them out.
Well,
My dad, you know,
I'd be
he had
careful.
traumatic brain injury, PTSD.
Again,
from,
like, bro, slow down. Like you're just you're just
okay.
flinging out anecdote after anecdote. Like, you know, it's like a cannabis commercial. Well, what I was struggling with eating, I smoked cannabis, and I felt better.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. No, I don't think
it's
it's for
lots of
everybody,
like,
though.
you
I
know,
don't think
like
it's for everybody.
very cliche type of arguments. Right? Now, again, a lot of what you're describing has truth in it, but it's also a lot of like anecdotal fluff. Okay. To be able to boil down an eating disorder to being fixed by cannabis is incorrect, right? Yes, it's a fact that after smoking or using cannabis-based products, it can like you know, induce more of an appetite in the user, right? But it's a well-known side effect of using it. In terms of how your feelings, your mood, and all those things, those are also chemically accounted for by what the actual plant does. Okay, it upregulates the production of dopamine. Dopamine is what makes you feel good. Okay, so yes, in terms of those immediate type of subjective qualias or experiences, yes, they would be reported as feeling better. But in
Well,
terms of
what I have
what
to
it actually does to you, it goes
what I
beyond your temporary experience and like your actual lived, you know, reality. You know, put it that way.
And the only reason why I believe that these anecdotes are actually important, though, is because, you know, in the United States, like a lot of the research behind cannabis has been like kind of barred because it's been like stuck. I don't necessarily remember. I think it was like what was it, Schedule 3, and then became Schedule 2.
I'm not sure
Like
how it
it
works over there.
became
No.
okay. Well, whatever
Over
happened,
here,
it became a
it's
more.
Class B
It had more medical
or
or
C.
more medical use was recognized, in the past year. You know, like I don't fuck with the new president or whatever, but like he made like it have more medically what was it? It had a more like more recognized medical use. That was what I was looking for, and that
But
kind of enabled it
it
to
wasn't
now
him
we
who
can-
did that, as scientists and lobbyists. But yeah,
or whoever did that. I know it just happened under his administration. You know, like,
yeah, that's
you know.
fair.
And it pretty much went from like
Lobbyists.
to have a more recognized medical use, so that allows it to be researched more, and you know we could actually figure out if you know like weed could be used to treat an eating disorder, weed could be used to treat depression, weed could be used to treat PTSD, and that's why I think these anecdotes are important, because that's all we
Yeah.
have. We don't have the research yet because it hasn't
This
been
is
allowed.
true.
We haven't had it
Well,
allowed.
no, that's not entirely true, right? There is still research that's happening in terms of. Look, right. So what you just said is absolutely valid. It's true. A lot of the information out there is anecdotal and self-reported, which isn't necessarily entirely negative. But you also have to understand there's a bias behind it. But in terms of how it's going to work in the pharmaceutical landscape, yes, like they're going to do drug trials. They haven't yet done drug trials comparing cannabis with other painkillers. So for the argument that it's the best solution for painkillers, that can't be proven yet. In terms of the argument that it's the best, like, appetite, you know, like, not suppressant, the opposite to that, whatever that may be, that's not proven yet either. So you're right, a lot of this is anecdotal. But I also think it's dangerous to speak on these anecdotal cases as if they're the standard or they're the norm. You know?
I just don't think we should ban things because they're dangerous, though. Like, we don't ban, like,
We do.
guns, like, you know, like, I mean, in the United States, we
In
don't
your
ban
country.
guns. Like, guns are dangerous. I mean, yeah,
In your
Michael,
country.
You're from UK, right? The
Yeah.
UK?
But look, my argument isn't simply we should ban it because it's harmful, right? That is a big part of the argument. But if you actually take a step back and look at, all right, what does it do to humans? More cons than pros, at least in the recreational setting, right? What does it do
that we know.
financially?
I don't know if that's necessarily
More
true,
cons
I
than
guess.
pros.
Like,
No, it is true. You can study it. Like we just talked about what it does to the development of your brain. We talked about how it upregulates dopamine and makes you more comfortable.
but how much
with
of a
being...
con is that? Because, yeah, I might have lost 2 IQ points, 3
I mean,
IQ points.
What do you mean?
but I
How is
got
that
through
not a
college. I
con?
got through college. You know, I got a
How is that not
biochemistry
a
degree.
con? All right, so don't get me wrong. Like what your like raw natural potential is, it's probably like unquantifiable what's possible. But to think that everyone has this like same potential is incorrect. The only thing that is somewhat consistent across the board with humans is that underlying anatomy. Okay.
Okay.
So that being said, it's objectively true that weed has an adverse effect on the development of the brain, and it's also linked to things like cannabis-induced psychosis, like put it this way, social disorders, things like antisocial behaviors, etc.
I mean, same with cell phones, though. We don't ban cell phones, though.
But
like,
they're
cell
not-
phones are horrible for your brain.
You're right, but they're not what we're talking about, and they're not chemical dependencies, right? Basically.
But it does chemical things to your brain, and like I don't.
Your
like,
brain is
no,
chemical.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it does a
look,
chemical thing to your
if
brain.
you was to
Yeah.
just hold your breath right now, like for like let's say for a minute or so, various different chemicals would release in your body, and you'd feel all different types of ways. So you can induce chemical reactions without any external stimuli, right? That's just a given. But when you're talking about, right, so like when you're talking about addiction itself is a psychological disorder, right? Or like, just keep it simple, right? It's a psychological disorder without the drugs involved. But when you bring the drugs on the table and you pair it with that addictive issue or the issue of psychological addiction, you create what's called drug dependency, right? So the chemical disbalance in your body is being regulated by your drug use. Hence why people build a tolerance to it and have to keep using more and more potent types to remain at the same level. Now, I'm not explaining this properly, but I'll explain it like this, right? The initial interaction with weed, right, just to keep it simple, would spike the dopamine in your body. That's why your first time smoking weed, it'll feel great or whatever it is you use. But as time goes on with prolonged use, you need more of that feeling to be able to feel normal. So in order to ever feel like that good dopamine release that you felt that one time, you would have to find something extremely, not necessarily extremely, but significantly higher in potency than what you
Or take a break.
usually use. Potentially taking a break too, but again, if you're going to take a break just to like, look, I put it like this, right? One of the things that like clinically define addiction is giving something up and then doing it again. So a tolerance break is very much so a clear sign of addiction.
I've
Okay?
always told myself, earn my vices. You know, I think we all have vices. You know, video games like you're playing right now. You know, that's like
Yeah, can
could be
be.
an addiction. You know, I don't think like
No, it actually can be. This is very true.
without moderation, we should like anything is bad. You know, like I don't think like just
Right, but
because like something needs to be moderated,
But
that means it's
that's
like
part of what I was just explaining, right? So you can be addicted to video games, you can be addicted to gambling, you can be addicted to playing football, you can be addicted to porn, right? But the difference is with these things, they are external. They're external stimuli in terms of like you're just getting sensory input, like a feedback between that, right? So the sensory input, like sparks dopamine or serotonin or oxytocin, all these various different chemicals in you by a reward system, simply put, okay? But when you introduce something that you're ingesting, it's like getting addicted to a type of fast food, like monosodium glutamate or like, you know, MSG that is, right? Or a pizza or a pop drink or cocaine or, you know, harder substances. You've now got something that's chemically fighting your body, right? It's chemically changing your body. Plus you've already got the feedback loop of the mental side of addiction. So it becomes worse than just a gaming addiction or a gambling addiction
I really still
because
think,
of
you
the
know,
extra chemicals.
gambling, video games, mobile phones, all these things do affect your brain in a chemical sort of way, and they can form not chemical bonds, because like I know like the whole idea behind a withdrawal is that like your receptor to that drug is dying. So yeah, I understand you don't have like physically chemical like bonds to these addictions, but I still think that like the cons of these addictions are just as bad, if not worse. Like I've never
No,
seen
so
like
that's
weed
subjective. That's
cause someone to
subjective.
kill somebody. I've seen
Yeah,
like alcohol
this
have
is poor.
drunk driving incidents all the
You're
time. They're
you're
not
correct,
legal,
but
you
this
know?
is the same type of like poor propaganda we kind of went past earlier on in terms of prohibition. One use of alcohol doesn't turn you into a drink driving madman and killing people. One use of tobacco doesn't turn you into a chain smoker and you know like coughing your lung out. One use of cannabis doesn't turn you into Batman jumping off a building. Okay, what actually happens is the long term use of it. Okay, so
What
these
do we
are
mean long term? Like what are we thinking long term? Like because I like
consistent use. Like it could, like for instance, right. So I'll explain it like this, right? There's 1.3 billion smokers in the world. 80% of all of those smokers start before the age of 20 and are chemically dependent, meaning they need this chemical to be normal by the age of 18. With some of the youngest people debuting at around the age of 9, right? So the psychology explains it like it's called like experimental debut, meaning this is the first time a child experiments with something. It happens around 9. Okay, so at the point in which you experiment with something, some people in life do something one time, figure out, nah, I don't like that, and they never do it again. At the point in which you do that thing again, after the first initial experimentation, it's begun the path of addiction. So you are now a regular to that thing, you're frequent to that thing. Whether it's a week, a month, a year, 6 months, time apart doesn't really matter if you go back to the same thing again and again. If you tried it once, then it's considered an experimentation. Right. Does
no,
that
I
make
understand.
sense?
Yeah, that does make sense about like what you're you're pretty much just trying to explain to me that like yeah, like it's not any less of an addiction just because you took a break from it. Is that what you're trying to explain?
Yeah, like, so yes, in simple terms, but like I said, well, that's kind of like my time, right? But the fact that people aren't able to completely cut it off and like do it once and never do it again is the sign of addiction, one of the primary signs of addiction.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not an addiction. I do think it's an addiction. I just don't think it should be banned. I don't know. I'm
So
very one to
what's
stand
the
for like
strongest reason why it shouldn't be banned? Because we skated over a
for the
bunch of
same
stuff.
reason we don't
like,
ban other addictions. You know, I think that, you know, it's like
Can you give an
bodily
example?
autonomy. I think it's up to our own like self if we want to choose to do something like that that's dangerous. You know, because we believe the pros outweigh the cons. I think we should go for it. You know, like same with like mushrooms. You know, I
All right,
think mushrooms like
slow
should be
down, right?
regulated.
So slow down, right? Is your primary argument that that it's bodily autonomy, you should be able to do what you want to your body, or is it something else?
essentially, and from a legal stance, if you're looking at other addictions, like we don't ban these other things, like I don't think we should be banning it just because it's
no,
dangerous
that's
and
not true.
addictive.
That's not true, right? That's a reason. There's a reason why majority of the drugs that are used recreationally are illegal. We do ban a bunch of things. Okay, so that's not true.
Well, not drugs. I'm talking about just addictions in general.
Bro,
like we don't ban dangerous addictive things.
Yes, we do. Like we do.
What about
What are
gambling?
you talking
like, we don't
about?
ban gambling.
Right. So
We
yeah,
don't
in
ban,
some
like-
places, gambling actually is banned, right? And it's heavily regulated because of the dangers of it, right?
yeah.
So what you're saying is just not true. I think if we're
It's
being
not
honest
entirely
here,
banned, though.
if we're being honest
same
here, like
with,
the strongest point from your side is saying that you should be able to do what you want to do. Am I wrong about that, or is it something else?
No, I think it's just like I'm like very thinking about this like legally. I don't really like, yeah, I accept it's dangerous. Yeah, I accept it's addictive, but I think that there's like a lot of pros that come with it that, to you may be anecdotal, but to me, I don't think that the research has been there to prove it yet. And, like if
Yeah, but
I want
that also
to
goes
choose
both
to
ways,
take
right?
that risk and choose to do something like that, I think it should be
So that is the argument you're making then, that you should be
Okay,
able to do what you want to do, right?
essentially, yeah.
But there are significant problems with that, and there have been historically, right? So, like I said to the caller earlier on, sorry to go over this if you was listening earlier on, let's just keep it nice and simple, right? It's your body, okay? You think you have the right to do whatever you want to do it, which isn't actually a right. It's a philosophical
Not
belief.
necessarily. I don't think that.
It's
I
not
don't think that.
actually it's not actually a legal right that you can do whatever you want to your body.
Yeah, I
No
don't think
law
that.
covers that, right? So it's a philosophical standpoint, which a lot of people agree with, okay? But that being said, we can expand this and look at the effects on not only you, but on society, right? You're not, and I don't say this like you're just like some vassal of the state, like you belong to the state and you know, just be a cell in a battery, basically. I'm not saying that. But put it like this. You said you should be able to do what you want, right? Now, do you think people should be able to, let's say, mutilate themselves?
Well, here's the thing. No, that's what I was trying to like say earlier. No, I don't think you should be able to do anything
why
you
not?
want to your own body.
But why not?
Why not? If I think killing yourself should be illegal. I think killing yourself or hurting yourself should be illegal.
That's like the final
with, like,
step.
you know,
But
like
why though?
I don't think you should be like cutting yourself, burning yourself, because that's like that's a good question. That is a good question. Like why
Okay, so
those things shouldn't be? But I mean, like it's
you need
it's
to
the
be
same
able to
question for
you need
like,
to be able
why
to
we shouldn't
establish
ban
where
other
you're going to
dangerous
draw the
things,
line.
you know?
No, but
I mean, I
this
guess
is the
where I would
problem.
draw the line is, I mean, a lot of it I do want to leave up to the scientific medical professionals to be able to, like, you know, determine. And I think that, you know, if there is research to prove that, you know, there is
But there is.
I mean, but there's not enough. There isn't
Look,
enough, and I don't think that's like something
right.
that.
So, for instance, if we're both biased in a sense, right? I'm arguing on the side of banning. You're arguing on the side of legalizing or keeping it pro. You're pro
regulate
it.
it.
Right?
I want to regulate it.
So do I, right? But we can't ignore both of our biases here. But if we were just like completely had no skin in the game, right, and someone just presented the facts to us, hey, there's this drug that makes you feel good, and someone's like, hey, look, this drug also does this to your body, we'd take a more informed decision about the substance itself. Now, you have access to both of those pieces of information, but seeing that you're on a side already, you're saying that that's not enough information for you, which is fair, okay? But if we're being honest here, if your argument is you should be able to do what you want, I ask you again, right? Why shouldn't you be able to mutilate yourself? Or an easier example is, why not sell yourself into slavery, right?
I mean, okay, well, for the first question you asked, I do think that, you know, in a way you can mutilate yourself. If you want to go free solo climbing on a mountain and then like fall off and die, go ahead. Like, no one's going to stop you. It's not illegal.
That's not the same thing.
It's a dangerous thing that's legal, though. And
Yeah,
you could die
but
from
that's
it.
not mutilating yourself.
I mean, if you end up on the ground falling 100 feet, that's pretty mutilated.
No, that's not. Like, an example of mutilating yourself would be that I'm going to take a chainsaw, go into my back garden, and I'm going to saw off my leg. Right? That's more like mutilation. Or, you know, I'm going to cut off my penis or something like that. Me not, God willing, right?
I mean, to do something like that, you have to be pretty mentally ill, though. I don't think we're talking about the same kind of people.
But wait. How do you establish that you're mentally ill at that point, right? Because there's actually a psychological. How do you explain this? A condition, right, where people don't see themselves as a whole unless they take a limb off of their body. So to them, the normal them, or how they would be in their healthiest and happiest life, is without that limb. So you, as someone who is not that person, how do you establish what the norm is, and how and why they're mentally ill?
Well, I mean, the norm isn't cutting off your leg because you'll die, right? If you cut off your leg.
Not necessarily. You won't necessarily die. But if someone was to say to you, well, the norm isn't getting high, and the norm also isn't destroying your lungs and your respiratory system and your brain development.
I mean, that's
So-
not going to kill me, though. Like,
Yes, it
and
will.
if I feel
Yeah,
like
yes,
there
it will.
is-
It may not kill you
I mean-
immediately, like the chainsaw to the leg, but it will kill you long term. So,
I mean,
So
yeah, but
what's
there's
the
other-
difference
that's not
between
mutilating
you-
yourself, though? That's not
it,
mutilation. That's
it
not...
is when you really think about it, right? Because you're
So
saying, right,
falling off a cliff isn't mutilation, but
no,
smoking and dying over
falling off
7
the
years
cliff
is
is
mutilation.
is an accident, right? So I'll explain it to you, right? The person who feels like they need to, they want to be an amputee is saying, look, I have this healthy limb, or I have this healthy organ, and I want doctors to remove this healthy limb or organ because it works perfectly fine, but I just would be happier without it, right? Is akin to you saying, look, I have this perfectly healthy working organ, but I just want to be able to destroy it, okay? It's the same kind of self-harm. Not exactly the same, it's two different modes, but both are self-harm, okay?
Because you're
But
saying
from
that like
your
you're
view-
taking the choice to do that.
Actively, yes. But from your view, you're saying, I have the right to harm myself in this way, but he doesn't have the right to harm himself in that way. That's essentially your stance.
I mean, well, here's the thing. Like, I think even with like, you know, the free solo climbing like thing I brought up, I think that that's still you making an active decision to potentially hurt yourself. I think that if
No,
you're
that's-
an
that's a-
avid free
you
soloer and you're going
avoided-
out every single day.
You avoided,
wait, what did I
you
avoid?
avoided it,
What did I
right?
avoid?
So, in terms of you destroying a perfectly healthy organ like your lungs, and the person who doesn't, who feels like a limb dysphoria, if you will, who wants to destroy a perfectly healthy limb, right? That's one comparison. That's not the same as the guy that climbs a cliff and potentially drops off. So you bringing that argument is avoiding what I just said to you. What is the difference between you wanting to help destroy your healthy lungs and that person wanting to destroy their healthy limb?
Well, I think the difference is one is mental illness, the other is someone who wants to get high and like just like eat some food or have a good time and laugh a little bit.
Right.
I think the other person is mentally ill. I think that's the difference.
Right, so what makes that person mentally ill and you not mentally ill?
Because I mean, okay, because I know I wouldn't argue that like, you know, like all the people in California, the 80 I don't know what it is, but like, you know, like all these people that I know, pretty much everyone I know, like, you know, we all smoke weed and stuff. I wouldn't consider them all mentally ill. I mean, they might be, but that's like just like statistically unlikely that like everyone I know is just mentally unill. My family's all mentally ill.
That's
But
not-
the person
not
who wants
true.
to cut off their
There's
leg
no
isn't,
statistic that
you know?
says that. I think quite a lot of people in our modern times are walking around with a lot of undiagnosed things, right? And it's not necessarily
What are
a
they
bad
mentally ill
thing,
with,
right?
would you say? Because I think there's,
Well,
I don't know what the mental illness
what I'm
is to
trying
cut
to
off your
explain to
leg,
you
but
is-
I think that's pretty bad. You know, like,
Well, it's not like I just explained to you. That person's type of dysphoria for their body is not that much different than you wanting to destroy your body for a good feeling. It's not that much different. Only difference is you're saying no. The market, e.g., like our healthcare system, shouldn't allow for that person taking off their limb. But you're willing to say the market should allow for this drug that destroys your organ. Okay, it's a contradiction in values.
well, I think it's the same thing, you know, like it's satisfying to your brain to gamble, but it doesn't mean that it should be banned. Like just because it can make you bankrupt and lose all your shit.
That's
like,
a different conversation. That's like a red herring. You
it
fail
a
to
red
establish. Yes, you fail to establish why that person that wants to lose a healthy limb is mentally ill, and you who wants to lose a healthy organ isn't mentally ill.
So you think everyone who smokes weed wants to just destroy their lungs, and that's the purpose of smoking weed?
But that's the cost of it. Not just
That's
your
the
lungs,
cost, not
also
the
your brain.
purpose.
But the
That's
thing
the
is,
exhaustive
right,
cost.
so at the point in which you're made aware that that's the cost, you're making an active choice. But here's where I'll hand you an olive branch, right? What addiction actually does and chemical dependency robs you of your autonomy to be able to make sensible choices because the drugs steer you towards more consumption. So at the point in which someone makes you aware, hey, you're destroying a healthy organ, the chemical dependency on the drug would make your ability to make decisions fuzzy around that. So you'd still choose to destroy the organ. So in a sense, yes, you are mentally ill because your view of reality is distorted.
It's the same for gambling though. Like, you know, gambling people, they'll lose all their shit and then they'll think it's a good idea to sell their house. And
You
then gamble
avoided
that
it.
away too.
You avoided
Wait,
it though.
what did I avoid?
Right. The question of why you're not mentally ill, but that person
I'm sorry. I'm
is.
trying to track. I'm trying to track.
So gambling, I understand and I totally agree. Gambling is an addiction and it is also a type of distortion of reality, but you're avoiding the point. Why is the person who wants to lose a healthy limb via the hands of a doctor different than you who wants to lose a healthy organ via the hands of your consumption?
Well,
Why are
there it
you
is again.
different?
Like, I don't want to lose a healthy organ. I don't think anyone who smokes wants to lose a healthy organ. That's kind of like silly, I feel like.
So if you know that, right, and you still choose to smoke, are you not then, let's say you're not the norm then, are you?
No, I don't think I'm the norm. No, I don't think it's the norm to smoke.
All right, so what all of this was to demonstrate is you aren't that much different than the person who feels that dysphoria about their limb, because that person is informed that taking off this limb isn't a good idea, just like you're informed that destroying this organ isn't a good idea. Yet
Or gambling the house isn't a good idea.
again, red herring has nothing to do with this particular
I think
example.
it has
right?
exactly to do with it. You know, I think a house.
It doesn't,
you know,
please.
like,
It doesn't.
that's a lot, you
It
know?
doesn't. It's a cope argument, and it's part of the same cognitive dissonance that getting through to addicts, you will face that. They will avoid it completely.
So
okay?
I'm gonna ask you a question. What do you think the difference is between selling, like gambling away your house, even though it's like, you know, a bad idea, or, you know, like just cutting off your leg? But either way, like both of them are gonna make you feel good. Like,
Right,
you know,
so-
you're doing it for dopamine.
Gambling has a level of bodily autonomy to it as well, right? But gambling is actually dictated by the market almost entirely, because you need a space to gamble and you need people to gamble with. In terms of your limb, that's something that's actually in your control. Now, whether you access the market to lose the limb or not is a different question. But you can't
So
gamble
why is that
on
important? The market.
You can't. It's definitely important because you can't gamble.
We're
on
talking
your
about
own.
legal
Now-
law, like, you know, we're talking about the law.
Exactly right, but your access to a product is completely dependent on the market. Okay,
Okay, yeah, it's dependent upon the market. Yeah.
so hopefully that makes
I just don't
sense
see
to
how
you,
that's
right?
important though.
So
yeah, I just don't
so
see how
there's a
that's-
difference between the guy that wants to lose a limb and the guy that wants to go gambling. Okay.
I just don't think that's an important
The guy
difference
that
though.
so this is why I keep explaining to you. Bringing up gambling is a red herring to the main point. It has nothing to do with it.
Why?
Okay? I just explained why, right? So to
Well,
go
you said it's
right,
because
so
of the market, but I don't think the market is like a really
Yeah, so-
big difference.
I explained to you like this, right? The guy that wants to lose a limb, that limb is already on his body. Okay? He doesn't have to go anywhere to access the limb to lose the limb. The
I can
person
gamble from my phone in any state, like using
Yes,
VPN.
but
Like,
it
I don't think
requires
that's it.
other people. All right, this is what
Does
I'm
it?
explaining to you. It's not this. Look, this is a very. I think you're just avoiding what you know to be true
I mean,
here, right?
I think cutting off your
Let's
limb
get-
requires other people too. Someone has
Yeah.
to have you as a baby. Like, that's the same thing. Like, I
Oh,
don't know.
come
Like,
on,
I
this is
think-
cope.
Yeah.
This is crazy cope, right? So, let's boil it back down to where we were. Okay. Why is the person that wants to lose their limb mentally ill, and the person who wants to lose their organ not mentally ill?
Well, I think that's just like a false equivalence because, like, we're not.
It
Who wants
it
to
would be a
lose
false
their
dichotomy,
organ?
but
Who want an equivalence? Because I don't think anyone wants to lose their limb. Like, and we're talking about someone who wants to smoke weed. That's not the same
but
thing.
there you
know?
go. But there you go, right? If you can follow that rationality and say, actually, wanting to lose an organ and wanting to lose a limb doesn't actually make sense. It's harmful, and then still say, I'm gonna do this thing that makes me lose the limb or do this thing that makes me lose the organ. You're existing in a contradiction. So you actively know what you're doing is wrong, but you choose to do it anyway.
But we do that all the time with legal stuff. Like,
But-
I don't see how that's different than any other legal thing we do.
But so then, if you were to say the guy that actually takes the chainsaw and chops off his leg is mentally ill, you could also say the guy that actually lights up a spliff and smokes it is also mentally ill, because they're both making an informed decision about the harm that they're doing to their self.
Same with alcohol or gambling. Or
Do
any
you
of
see?
these things.
Do you
I don't
guys
see
hear him
how,
avoid
like,
it again?
difference
Do you see him
I mean,
avoid it
if
again?
anyone in
Right?
the chat, like, you know, thinks,
Avoided
like,
it.
I don't know, can guide me
Avoiding
in the
it
right way,
again,
like,
right?
or to help me understand, you know, I don't know.
I'm explaining
Like,
it to you.
I'm just like, I don't think like it's like that different. Like, you know, like, what's the difference between making an informed decision of gambling and something that's like, you
Right,
know,
so-
like smoking weed.
Why?
Like, I don't
Why
see
did
the
right? So
difference.
why did we go down this long road in the first place? Because your main argument was bodily autonomy. I should have the right to do what I want because it's my body, right? And I was explaining to you, you've gone down this long reasoning to agree that the person who wants to cut off their limb shouldn't have the right to do that, right? But you failed.
I don't think that's my entire argument, though.
But
I
no,
don't think my argument
as
is
a
just
part
you
of
should
the
be able to do what you
reasoning,
want.
as a part of the reasoning, it's inconsistent because you're saying that person can't do what they want to their body, but you can do what you want to your body, right? So that's where it's inconsistent. That's what I was trying to explain to you. An easier example to move beyond there is if you want to say, look, I'm pro freedom, right? Absolutely pro freedom. I even have some love for libertarian ideologies, right? But one of the things that was put forward by a guy called John Stuart Mill is that in order to have freedom, there has to be parameters on the freedom, okay? Or else it's meaningless, right? If freedom has no parameters, then it's meaningless. An example of this is, in order to have freedom, one wouldn't be able to sell their self into slavery. Why wouldn't they be able to sell their self into slavery? Because it would prohibit future freedoms, right? Or it would inhibit future freedoms. They wouldn't be able to be free in the future. So it wouldn't make sense to sell yourself into slavery using what you think is freedom. That being said, to express bodily autonomy in a society that is affecting other people, us being interconnected, there has to be parameters, or else it's senseless. Why can't you take off your limb? Why can't you sell yourself to a cannibal and be eaten in public? Why can't you, dangle from the Empire State by your toe, right? There has to be parameters.
I'd really just like to know, like, I don't know, like, you could call it like a red herring. I just would really like to know, like, what the inherent difference behind taking a risk in something that you know is dangerous is between, like, gambling or, like, smoking. Like, I don't know what the main difference is. You're saying the market, but I just don't think that's, like, very...
So, for
big of a
instance,
thing.
right?
And,
Let's put it like this, right? Do you remember? And actually, this is a really bad example for the internet. I wanted to bring up the Futurama thing with that booth, but that's a really bad example for the internet. We would get in trouble, right? But let's just say Walmart tomorrow decides to put on the market a kit that lets you operate on yourself and like dissect your limbs, right? And they put it out on the market and they say, look, for £100 you can get a kit that does everything you need to take your limbs off, detach them wherever you want, right? And people start going, you know what? I want to detach my limbs on the bus. I want to detach my limbs at the park. I want to detach my limbs at school, right? But I'm going to do it perfectly legally because I'm purchasing the product that helps me detach my limbs from the market because the market is allowing for it, right?
how is that legal, though? That
right.
doesn't, like, just because
I'm
Walmart sells, like, saws?
I'm drawing a parallel, right? So the kit that can potentially kill you, right, is being sold legally because the kit itself is a bit of kit. This is even, actually, the kit would be more moral than what we're about to describe next, right? So now there's this other type of product on the market, right? And this other product on the market makes you feel good, but it kills your body, right? It destroys your lungs. It destroys your brain, right? People start saying, you know what? I want to destroy my lungs and my brain at the park. I want to destroy my lungs and my brain on the bus. I want to destroy my lungs and my brain at my house. They're accessing the market with a product that is explicitly designed to destroy your lungs and your brain. Okay, this is why it's analogous to the guy that wants to lose a limb and the guy that doesn't care if he loses an organ.
But the thing is, they literally, like, when you're saying they sell a kit legally at the store to disassemble yourself, what, it's a kit full of saws and shit? They already sell that at the store.
It's metaphorical.
Yeah, I know, but they already sell that. It's like, it's not metaphorical because that's real. They do sell that shit at the store. If you want to go to Home Depot, you can disassemble yourself very easily,
Obviously,
like,
but not with the express purpose of, hey, like, dissect yourself. That's not the point.
I mean,
right?
yeah, the express purpose of weed isn't to, hey, let's kill your lungs and brain. That's not the express purpose.
It's let's say it's an unintended consequence, right? But in terms of tobacco,
but if you buy a kit that's meant to cut off your leg, that's not the
in terms of tobacco,
purpose.
In terms of tobacco, which is actually on the market in the same sense as a kit would be, the express purpose is for you to feel good temporarily and kill yourself long term. That's because that's what the product does. But you wanting to be able to access the product is a problem.
It does it, but it's not the purpose.
Say again?
That's like saying the purpose of gambling is to lose all of your shit, or the purpose of mountain climbing is to fall off a mountain and die.
It is. It is. Right?
It is.
Like in terms of gambling, right? gambling is set up for you to lose your money. Like a casino couldn't work if you won. Okay, it is set up for that. All right, do you realize that?
I mean, what about mountain climbing then? You know, and
Alright,
like
so-
I mean that's the same
so
thing. though.
mountain
What about
climbing,
climbing? The
like,
purpose
so
isn't
when
to
you-
fall off and die, but it happens. you
Agreed,
know?
right? Agreed. But now what you're doing is you're taking the consumption of a product and you're comparing it to an activity. An activity is different, okay? The intended consequences or the unintended consequences of an activity aren't even really related. For instance, right?
So we shouldn't ban it because it's an activity.
We all know there are numerous. It's more risky driving a car than it is catching a plane or a submarine. Okay, yet we drive
smoking
cars
weed.
all the time, right? But
Yep.
the pros, in terms of the utility of the car, far outweigh the potential outcomes. That's why we put so much regulation in place, at least in my country, anyways, and in Sweden and places like that, to make it safer to drive the car, so you can extract the utility from it. Okay. When you're talking about an action or an activity of driving versus the consumption of something, there are alternatives that you can consume that don't have those, poor outcomes. But people don't choose the alternatives. They want the ones that actually harm them. So them choosing the ones that actively harm them with the information that is harming them is the same as the guy that wants to cut off his limb. He knows the risks, but he wants to harm himself anyway. Okay?
Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. I see. I don't know. I think that like in this like kind of aspect, I don't know if like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to track. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't really understand like how like I'm trying to my best to like see the main difference between these dangerous activities, you know. But I think also a big thing that I kind of was like thinking about, like I'm not trying to like pivot. I just like don't think I'm like gonna understand it that much, like about the similarities between cutting off a leg and smoking weed. I'm sorry, I just like don't see the correlation whatsoever.
The correlation
But-
is damaging a healthy body part. That's the
I mean, but there's
correlation.
tons of things that correlate to that. Like
No.
tons of things. Like what about or not sunbathing, but like you know those like sun tanning things, like
Yeah.
you could get skin cancer from those things, and it's like we don't make them illegal, like but
Right,
they give you skin cancer.
But the sun is something that's all right. For instance,
No,
There-
not the
there-
sun. The sun like tanning beds, like the beds.
oh, like yeah. Well, people who do that are actually stupid. Right? I'm not. I'm not going to argue with you about that. That is stupidity.
I mean,
right?
a lot of people used to do that. It used to be very popular.
Yes,
You know?
but it's stupidity, right? Ultimately, it's you're trying to synthesize sunlight to get a tan, right? Forgetting
Should
that
we
you-
make it illegal though?
in some cases, yes, right? If it's not properly
I think
regulated.
that's just like silly.
Yes.
You know, I think that
No,
that's natural
it's not
selection.
silly,
If
right?
people want to do something
See, right? So
stupid like
now
that, then they can die. and do it.
you're getting politically problematic to say natural selection, right? That's a whole nother can of worms. Even though natural
Okay, no, that was a
selection,
joke. I'm not for
natural selection is real. It's a whole nother can of worms to say, right? Look, there's this group of vulnerable people who don't have the information. We can protect them from themselves essentially, or we could just let them die, right? There's a whole like so you've got
No, I was
you've
joking.
got
No, I was joking.
necropolitics
I
and you've got biopolitics. But that whole view that you just said, the power to decide who lives and who dies or who we let die, is deep in philosophy and it's deep in sociology, and these are real
Totally.
problems that people are trying to solve. But
No, I don't think anyone should die.
no,
I don't think we
in
should let
terms
anybody
in
die.
terms
I
of
think
like
that's
the mother of three, who's like she's a bit chavvy and she wants to get a tan, but instead of going and sitting in the sun, she goes and lays in the sunbed and gets cancer. Right, that's a mitigatable risk that did not have to happen. Okay.
So should we ban that too?
Yes, to an extent. I was going to give you an example of this, right? The invention of the car without a seatbelt. We had to make it mandatory to have seatbelts. We had to make it mandatory to have like structural integrity around the engine block. Right?
Yeah. I feel like your view is
So-
like very beautiful, like on paper. Like it would be great if the world worked out the way that like you want it to kind of work out, in a way that like banning things like that would be great. But I mean, like I think that
We
there's
do.
a great large reason why a lot of these things aren't banned, and I think it's just the fact that people don't want to give up these things. They don't want to give up their autonomy. They don't want to give up their freedom. They want to be
But they're
able
not,
to
though.
like access these things.
This is where the debate kind of loses its course, right? Because your ability to make choices isn't something that's being infringed or impinged upon. What people mistake, right? This is what like the classical type of like neoliberal postmodern person gets confused here, right? We're not talking about the person, right? We're talking about the market, what is in the environment. And an analogy for this is like imagine God actually exists, right? I don't know what you believe. Don't really care. With all due respect,
I'm a
It's
agnostic. Yeah.
cool. It's just a metaphor, right? Imagine God is like the dad of all human beings, all species, and God has humans as a baby, right? And on the floor with humans, there are needles, there are guns, there are bombs, there are diseases, there are all these things that God actively left in the environment or put on the floor with the baby, right? In terms of harm mitigation, it is absolutely God's responsibility. This, as an example, of course, not really God, right? But it's absolutely God's responsibility to make sure these various different environmental harms are at least mitigated or removed if possible. Now, if you're looking at society as it works cohesively in any country you go to, that collective responsibility is on all of us. Whether you're a libertarian, you're like a hardcore capitalist, you're a socialist, you're a Nazi, whatever you identify as politically, there's no doubt about it that you're just as responsible for your actions as you are for the environment around you, so to speak, right? So when you say to somebody, look, I should have the right to use the one of the various things on the ground with me, right? And someone says to you, well, actually, we're gonna design an environment where these dangerous things aren't even on the ground anyway. When you realize it like that, oh, the dangerous thing that I think I have a right to use is something that's actually been manufactured in me to want to use that thing. Okay? If that thing wasn't in your environment, wasn't presented to you, you wouldn't develop an urge and a need to use that thing. Okay? This is what's called social engineering. So the fact that you want to be able to use cigarettes, you want to be able to use alcohol, only speaks to the fact that someone has already put those in your environment and orientated you towards them already. Just like God could have said, actually, I'm going to take AIDS off the ground. I'm going to take that needle off the ground. Instead, I'm going to put let's reverse the roles. The devil's saying, instead, I'm going to make sure there's needles on the ground. I'm going to make sure there's AIDS on the ground. I'm going to actively steer you towards the AIDS. And I'm going to psychologically prime you to want the AIDS or want the needle. That is your position in society, okay? And I'm saying to you, actually, we can make a world where there aren't no needles and there aren't any AIDS on the ground. Right? That's what I'm saying to you.
I don't think it's possible, though. I don't think that's the thing. I think it's against human nature,
it is
kind
possible.
of like what you're thinking about. Like, I don't think that, you know, like I don't know too much about the prohibition, but I'm as far as I know, didn't we just like kind of freak out and like pretty much just like have a big violent cabal because like they tried to ban alcohol?
No, that isn't how it happened. So the prohibition was instituted in the 1920s to the 1930s, right? America was going through what's described as the Great Depression now, in hindsight. But this is how it actually went down. The prohibition was initiated by a religious group. It was primarily led by a group of mothers. So it was a religious experiment that was implemented by the government at the time. It wasn't done for economy. It wasn't done for public health. It was done for religious beliefs. Historians could tell you this. You could look it up for yourself. Now, various issues that happened for the prohibition, why it's not really a good source for proving the counterfactual, right? What prohibition does tell you is how to do things better. So I'll explain it. During the prohibition, the Fed, which is like the main government of America, and then you've got states underneath them, they decided to implement prohibition. But what they did in terms of policing it is they sent out 1,500, that's 1,500 federal agents to police the entirety of the US population. There were millions of US citizens then, and there are millions of US citizens now. So that was one of the big failings of prohibition. The religious ideology behind prohibition was one of the big failings. The next big failing was you could still legally get alcohol on the market. Hence why earlier on when we talked about my thoughts on banning alcohol, it was more nuanced. During prohibition, you could get alcohol prescribed to you by a doctor, e.g. whiskey. And you could get a doctor to prescribe alcohol to you for your pains and for your anxiety, right? Just like how weed is currently being prescribed. The next way you could get alcohol was for a religious sacrament, just like how weed is currently accessible via religious sacrament in some places. The next way you could get alcohol during the prohibition was via production, okay? So industrial production, for things like, you know, various different things. So I don't really understand, okay? Bro, don't chew on the mic while I'm explaining something, please. It's kind of
I'm
rude.
sorry. No, that was something else. My bad. I'm not eating food.
All right, cool. So you could get alcohol legally, right? During prohibition, it was policed by 1,500 agents. It was initiated as a Christian experiment. The next issue was you were bleeding out money economically because of the Great Depression. A lot of people make the argument that prohibition created a black market for alcohol. which isn't true, right? The tradition of creating moonshine and alcohol as local people has existed for a very long time, and it still exists to this day, right? What
Do
a
you
black
not think it went like
what
up though, like during
now
that time?
what I'm trying to explain to you is the next part, right? What a black market actually is a parallel market. It exists simultaneously. Now, in 2018 and 2019, there was a study that was done, and it demonstrated that 25% of all alcohol consumed during that period of time was produced on the black market, right? And it was delivered to legitimate places like corner shops, etc., and bars, and people were none the wiser, right? That is an example of how a black market works. It's called counterfeiting for a reason. Now, in terms of like hindsight glorification, we have movies like Elliot Ness, we have the rise of like Al Capone and all these great famous stories about bootlegging and shit, okay? That is a lot of, I was going to say American exceptionalism, but that's kind of entwined in it. But a lot of that is storytelling after the fact. The real reason Prohibition failed was one, because of its implementation, is a Christian experiment, because of the poor policing, 1,500 agents. Also, I forgot to mention, because of the vested interest with police officers and various people who were already drinking alcohol and not policing it properly, that too. But the main two reasons was they were losing money on the economy and they were facing a Great Depression, and World War II was coming up. So they needed that money, and they also needed to liquor up their soldiers, their men and their women, to send their asses off to die, okay? There's a lot of nuance when you look at history holistically. Now, is it to say that we can't learn things from the Prohibition and the Prohibition like wouldn't work? No, like we can learn lots of things from the Prohibition, okay? But American Prohibition on alcohol isn't a demonstration that alcohol itself actually, that banning alcohol actually fails. There are various really good arguments against Prohibition that have like nothing to do with the actual American Prohibition, right? Prohibition itself can be difficult to implement for various other reasons. But look, a lot of people are misinformed about the facts around Prohibition, and those are some of them, okay? So no, it doesn't create a black market. No, people didn't go crazy, right? It was an economic issue primarily. Okay.
Well, thank you for the history lesson. That was very informative. You know, I'm very. I didn't know about a lot of that. But yeah. I mean, shit. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't know how it would go down. I don't know. I think that it would just be very difficult. I think a lot of problems would arise. Like, I think that's why many countries haven't tried it yet. I think, like, I was like, kind of like,
Well,
I was like, oh my God, when I heard that, like, you know, the UK and stuff, they were doing like the generational smoking ban. I was like, that's crazy. Like, I feel like that wouldn't fly in America. But I mean, I don't know. That's crazy. Like, I don't really have like too much to say kind of like on like, I guess the Prohibition, I suppose. I just don't necessarily think I don't think it would work out. I don't think people would stand for it. I think that there would be push against that, because I think, you know, a lot of people do enjoy their alcohol, a lot of people do enjoy their tobacco, and like I'm not someone
This
who
is
really
true.
smokes or drinks a lot. Like I don't really smoke and drink, or I smoke weed a lot, but I don't really smoke and drink like alcohol and stuff a lot. But I don't think people would like it would pan over as easy as you would think it is, you know. And I think that especially for the people that already like it's like a big part of their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you know, I did like your implementation that you're talking about, like kind of like it was like your 5-step, 6-step plan about how we would like implement it. And I think that, you know, on paper it sounds great. I just don't know how it would necessarily pan over. But I
It's a
think most
reality.
importantly, we just need
It's
to
a
kind of
reality
like
that's coming. This is what a lot of
that.
people
That
don't understand, right? It's a
I mean, that
reality
would be
that's
cool because
coming.
I do agree. If I when I was like 13 or 14, if I never picked up any sort of like smoking, I probably wouldn't even care about it because like I wasn't like, you know, doing it. And I do like agree with that. But I don't know. I just don't like. I don't really. I think what's most important is that because I kind of got to go right now unless you have anything else you want to say. But
I got plenty I want to say, but well, I'll let you have the
oh
last
well,
word.
yeah, yeah. But you could say whatever you want to say after. I won't get like the last word, by the way.
No.
Yeah,
Finish your point.
But yeah, I think that we just need to kind of like really hone in on this research and like, you know, I think pretty much every single thing that Trump has ever done has been bad, but I do think that moving to like a more medically recognized use, I think that that's like the enable
I don't
of
think you should. I don't think you
us.
should credit that to his administration. That was something that was coming to the US anyway.
Okay, well,
I
yeah,
had a lot of
okay,
years of underground work, primarily from the left of your country. To be quite honest with you, it was only until like the conservatives realized they could make money from it that they started to get behind them. So
I mean, yeah, that's why.
don't be too
At
quick
the
to
same
credit
time,
Trump's
I don't
administration.
necessarily think it's a good thing.
But,
I think it's a good thing for the research, but I think it's a bad thing that it's becoming like, you know, a pharmaceutical drug like Xanax or whatever, where you have to like go get prescribed by a doctor. Like, I mean, that's just like my own opinion, but like, I do think that the research is going to be very important, and like, I think that, you know, there might be more of a fighting chance for us to like do something with it if, you know, we actually are able to prove that these anecdotes aren't just anecdotes. But
I'm actually
I don't know.
with you on that. I'm not against medicinal purposes, right? Like, I am not against that. We're talking about recreational smoking. I just think it's dangerous, like, when we start to frame the conversation as if recreational smoking is medicinal use. That's like the kind of sleight of hand that addicts use, right? And this is what puts people in danger. Let the chemists and the scientists do their research, for sure. Let them do it, right? Let them produce the CBDs, the tinctures, the vapes, the creams, the topicals, all of these wonderful things, the edibles. Let them do their work, but don't get in the way of their work by actually detracting from it by saying me smoking a spliff is me doing that stuff. You're messing up your own progress by that. If that makes sense. If you care about the plant and the various other medicinal purposes, you would be holding them back by parading in that way.
Yeah. Well, I will say, like, one thing you have changed my mind on, like, in this whole thing is like, your plan kind of made it seem like, you know, like, yeah, if we actually were be able to attain, like, something where it's like, you know, people never got on it in the first place, I don't think it would be that difficult for people to just, like, stay off of it. But, I mean, I don't know. That's, like, kind of, like, on paper, that's, like, that's... I don't know.
Look,
Like,
I'll give you an example,
off.
just something to think about, right? If you need like a comparative type of view, right? I think it was in the 1800s, right, where doctors used to prescribe cocaine to kids to calm them down. Okay, ask yourself why they don't do that anymore, and where cocaine sits societally.
Because it's very addictive. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't know too much about cocaine. Like, I know it's like addictive, and, you know, it's like whatever. But that's probably why. I don't like. Is it harmful? I don't even think it's like necessary because it's like what a leaf.
Now think back 100 years or so, right? Doctors were prescribing cigarettes to women, men, and in some cases children too. Okay, so when you start thinking about what's possible in a certain time horizon, I think like to like paraphrase John Henry Clark, like the arc of history or history arcs towards justice, it's possible, right? It's not impossible. It's absolutely possible.
I mean, in my lifetime, I don't know about me. Like, I'm never quitting. But I hope that, you know, like, for example, like my little brother, I hope he doesn't pick it up, start smoking. You know?
Well, he's looking at you.
I mean, well, he don't know. He don't know about
No, he knows, right?
I live on my own. No, I live on my own.
This is how it happens to most people in most families.
He lives in a different state.
Bro,
but his dad smokes and stuff, so it's kind of like, I don't know. And, like, you know, we grew up on the farm together.
Look, you're not low-key, I'll put it like that, right? Like, the people who smoke weed think they're low, right? We can tell you're high, we can see you're high, and most of the time we can smell it, okay?
What about right now?
This is the kind of, like, right now, like, 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 probably, right? This is the kind of like illusion that you're in when you're under the influence. You can't actually see yourself, right? Now, most of us can't see ourselves even when we're sober, but being high, there's an extra level of perception which you just don't have access to, right? Self-awareness that you just don't have. Okay?
No, I agree. I do agree. Yeah. So, pros and cons, you know, pros and cons. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna let everyone wants to get in this talk to you. So.
Nah, I appreciate it.
Good conversation, bro. You're very intelligent. What was the
name? Was it Brian or was it something else?
Yeah, my name's Brian. What was your name?
It's Set, S-E-T.
S-E-T, Set. All right, nice to meet you, Set. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Nice to meet you too, bro. Whole hour,
all right,
you know.
Bye-bye.
All right, big up. Guys, like, I've seen some very interesting people in the comments and that, but, like, it's the UK and I've got responsibilities. I would love to stay on longer. If you want to have this conversation with me or pick it up at another time, just subscribe, hit the follow button. Whether you agree or disagree, we talk about all kinds of things. But this is something I'm adamant about. And I think it's the right thing to do. Yeah, Set is my real name. You know, it's my parent given name. It has nothing to do with Egyptian gods. It's actually a Jewish name. But yeah, that's my real name. So, thanks for tuning in. I know it's not many of you are tapping a like or hitting that follow button. But yeah, I'll see you next time. Meridian, I really can't, bro. Just drop the follow, bro, and I'll see you in the next one. All right. Thanks for tuning in, and good luck. Anyone out there that's actually trying to figure this thing out in terms of addiction, like, you can do this, bro. In the UK, I don't know where, probably given the time most of you are watching from another country, but in the UK, the NHS run a free smoking cessation service. There's a number that you just Google, you bring that number, and they will provide you with like various different means, chewing gums, patches, etc. Help you get off tobacco. If you're suffering, yes, it is a Jewish name, right? It's pronounced Set, but it's Seth, right? It's in the Bible. Anyways, like, why am I explaining this to you? You go figure it out. Right. It's a replacement for what's that guy's name? Abel. It's the third son. Right. But anyways, if you're trying to get this thing figured out, you can absolutely quit. Right. I used to smoke. I don't smoke anymore. Right. There are many good arguments I could give you, but I think what for most people what it would take is experiencing a tragedy of some kind, probably. Right, maybe, hopefully not. If we have more conversation like this, probably not. Right, but anyways, good luck to you if you're trying to quit, and then if you're thinking about it, just grab some more information. Right?